Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chen Zhiwang, Chinese Studies Librarian of Starr East Asian Library of Columbia. I'm speaking here on behalf of Jim Chen, the director of Starr East Asian Library. He's feeling under the weather and out of extra caution, and Jim chose not to be with us for now. Thank you all faculty, students, and friends very much for coming. Thank you very much to the leaders and colleagues of Columbia University Libraries, Weatherhead East Asian Institute, Department of East Asian Languages and Cultures, China Institute, and Starr East Asian Library, as well as distinguished benefactors of the library for your great leadership and support to make the acquiring, processing, and serving of important spatial connections possible, and to make today's event possible. We have a 2-hour program, a couple of logistics details. First, we are going to have a 10-minute break after the documentary film screening, which is from 5 o'clock. And the restroom, for those who don't know, it is out of this room, turn left. After the elevator area, it is at your left hand. Please let me very briefly introduce all our speakers. First, the distinguished leaders from both Columbia and China Institute. Chris Cronin, Associate University Librarian for Connections, Columbia University. Eugenia Lin, Professor of Chinese History, Department of East Asian Languages and Cultures, and Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs, Columbia University. Minhang Yuan, Dorothy Borg Chair of History of the United States and East Asia, Director of the Weatherhead East Asian Institute, Columbia University. And also George Guo, CEO of China Institute in America, but he is sick and cannot make today. So Dr. Yong Ho, China Institute Renwen Society Chair, will speak on behalf of George Guo. Then my colleague Evian Pan, a Chinese processing archivist. Next, our esteemed panelists, Michael Fong, private equity investor, philanthropist, art connector, and son of Ivan Fong. Ivan Fong served as chairman of the board of the trustees of China Institute from 1997 to 2001. And Caroline Xu, Barther, designer, philanthropist, art connector, and great grandniece of Kuo Ping-Wen, who served as the co-founder of China Institute in 1926. Wayne Ye, Professor Emeritus of History, University of Massachusetts, Boston, and Yanqiu Zheng, Associate Director of Asian and Pacific Programs, St. Lawrence University. Both Professor Ye and Professor Zheng studied and published on Chinese students who studied in the US and the student turned leaders related to the China Institute. Now, Chris Cronin, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming today. On behalf of our Vice Provost and University Librarian, Ann Thornton, I wanted to welcome you all to Columbia and to this really incredible event today. Second, I would like to thank Jim Chang, the director of the Starr East Asian Library, and his excellent team for successfully processing, managing, and promoting the extremely valuable archival materials that are the subject of today's event. As you know, Jim couldn't be here today, but he also wanted me to convey to you all his regret that he couldn't join you and see you in person. Over the past decade, Columbia University Libraries has prioritized its pledge to ensure that all of our collections are properly described and made discoverable and accessible to scholars at Columbia and from around the world. Jim Chang has been particularly active in advancing this goal, and we are so pleased to now have 2 full-time archivists, one at Starr and one in the Rare Book and Manuscript Library, with expertise in languages, Asian languages, history, and cultures, including Evian Pan, processing archivist for Chinese Special Collections, who will be presenting with us later this afternoon. Since its very founding of the Weatherhead East Asia Institute over 75 years ago, Weatherhead and the Starr Library have formed and enjoyed a critical, strategic, and long-standing partnership with one another. Closely connected to our faculty and students' research and teaching interests, Columbia Libraries is committed to support the university's mission of preparing our students to be global citizens. With the outstanding and unique archival collections curated by Starr Library, today's event is just one demonstration of that enduring commitment. As many of you know, our beloved Starr Library is currently under extended renovation, and we hope to reopen it very soon. Starr has long been a treasured space for research, study, teaching, and for providing our students with a place to gather and to collaborate with one another. And as much as we do treasure the physical materials held at the Starr Library, we are also greatly pleased and thankful for the support of the Weatherhead over the years, not just to acquire, but also to digitize special collections at Starr in order to make them accessible to the world. I envision many more such collaborations between Weatherhead and the Starr Library in coming years. And I know that many scholars and students will come to use the China Institute records for their teaching and research in studies of U.S.-China relations. And hopefully they will do so in a beautiful and reopened Starr Library. Thank you to all of our esteemed speakers who are joining us today. And I will turn it back to you for next introductions. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. In order to accommodate more people and take out the seats, how about panelists, Michael, Caroline, and Professor Chen, would you please take seats over there so your seats could be used by other people? Professor Eugenia Lin.
Okay, we're doing some rearrangement, it seems. It's nice to see such a full house for this exciting event. Maybe I'll let some people sit down first before we continue. So it's my honor to actually be invited to start some comments at this event. I'm the former director of the Weatherhead East Asian Institute. I'm an avid user of Starr Library as a historian of China. I've been teaching here in the East Asian Languages and Cultures Department for, 20 some years. And I'm currently the Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs in the Provost Office. So I'm very, very committed to the thriving of the academic community writ large at the university, but my heart lies with East Asian Studies, I have to say. So I'm extremely happy to be able to participate in this event. And I have some brief comments. I don't know, many of you are probably not much older than me or not much younger than me, but I have to read from my phone, which is a big challenge. My daughter thinks that this is a very easy thing to do, to read from my phone, but I always find that to be a bit of a challenge. So bear with me, my printer did not work. But anyways, I wanted to thank Starr Library for all of its entrepreneurial efforts to really develop archives and collections related to Asian studies over the years. I know that Jim can't be here tonight, and I've been in touch with him this morning actually, and he's actually flying to China tomorrow and for family business, and he really regrets not being here. And I know he was very, very excited for this event. But I wanted to just just take a pause and praise Jim's stewardship of the East Asian Starr Library over the years. He has been incredibly energetic, entrepreneurial, very capacious, and is thinking about what can belong in an archive. And he's been very, very dedicated with the support from the Central Library, his talented librarians, including Chen Zhiwang here, to really rethink our collection in fundamental ways. And I think the events like this here, which bring the local community who are also very interested in Asia, Asian relations, US-Asia relations, to participate in this project with us is something that I think he's also really showed amazing leadership on. And so that's something that I've always been sort of in awe of him and his ability to do that. And so I really wanted to thank our panelists tonight. I'm sure lots of thanks will be going to them for participating in what is such an incredibly important endeavor for our campus and the vitality of Asian studies and our Asian collection. I'm also very excited about tonight's topic in the sense that the China Institute shares a lot of the commitment that the Weatherhead East Asian Institute and those of us who study East Asia here at Columbia have in terms of facilitating cultural, artistic, commercial, healthy diplomatic exchange between China and the US. And this has been done in multiple ways from both institutes, and I think the collaboration is all the more important, especially given some of the immediate geopolitical challenges we're facing today in terms of China-US relations. So this kind of bridging of the two societies, two polities, while we live in one single world is actually all the more important today. So I again want to underscore the importance of this partnership, and the ability for us to have these kinds of events is all the more important. There is, of course, a long history between Columbia and the China Institute, right? I don't know if Chenji shared this or if Chris mentioned this, but the China Institute, right, an internationally renowned U.S. nonprofit organization, has close connections with Columbia, both in terms of its founding members, including Columbia faculty, and then famous alumni, right? So John Dewey, Paul Monroe, Chinese scholars Hu Shi, and Kuo Ping-Wen, were all, ties, deep ties, famous faculty and alumni of Columbia. So I see us continuing that relationship with events like the one tonight. I will also mention that my own teaching is related to modern Chinese history. And I teach from the early modern period to the 21st century, but I also, my actual research kind of focuses on the early 20th century. So many of our speakers have both personal ties, familial ties, but also intellectual ties to the history of 20th century. As does the Institute itself, the China Institute itself is their historical significance, right, that it's played in terms of US-China relations, that I am very interested in, because I do study the relationship between China and the world in this period. And I do it currently from the perspective of scientific and technological exchange, which I think is also should be on the table as we discuss cultural, political, commercial exchange, right? Today, again, in this fraught moment, technology is front and center in some of the questions of US-China relations. So again, this is something that I'm really grateful that we have the panelists today to continue this deep and significant partnership between Columbia and the China Institute. So with that, I wanted to hand the mic over to my colleague and dear friend, Hang Nguyen, who will speak on behalf of the Weatherhead.
I think I'm going to kind of merge over to the middle and unfortunately turn my back to the panel just so that everyone can see. So thank you, Eugenia. Thank you. So I am Lian Hang Wen, and I'm the 12th and current director of the Weatherhead East Asian Institute. And I'm also the Dorothy Borg Associate Professor in the History of the United States and East Asia in the Department of History. So just for the benefit of visitors who've never been to the Institute before, but not you, Ying, and who may not know us, the Weatherhead East Asian Institute at Columbia University was founded in 1949. So several of our founding members helped shape U.S. diplomatic policy towards Asia during and after the war. They knew firsthand the importance of understanding the cultures, languages, and histories of the countries the United States was then engaging with. And this is, of course, absolutely necessary now. They also recognize the need for a place to transmit that knowledge to younger generations. So voila, that is why we're here today. And now we're turning 76 since our birthday was last year. So from Weatherhead's earliest days, Columbia University libraries have played a major role in what we do. So I think it's only appropriate ahead of today's program to acknowledge our long history of collaboration with them. Probably our best known collaboration, one that I think some of you here may be familiar with, is the Chinese Oral History Project that C. Martin Wilbur, one of my predecessors and Eugenia's predecessors, as director of what was then called East Asia Institute before it became Weatherhead East Asian Institute, led starting the Oral History Project. So this project included a series of interviews with about 19 of the most prominent political leaders of Republican China who, by the late 50s, were all living here in the United States or in Hong Kong. Our interviews with them and the related records and documents, and here I'm talking about more than 17,000 pages worth, are housed in Columbia's Rare Book and Manuscript Library, where they've been the proverbial trove of information for generations of scholars from around the world. So many people have consulted our oral history project. Closer to present day, since I cannot cover our 75 years of how much we have worked with the libraries, the Institute has provided support to the C.V. Starr East Asian Library in digitizing more than 900 rare and archival Tibetan books on Columbia University's library's digital platform, which if you haven't known about this yet, it's a tremendous resource that anyone should explore. I mean, just poke around in our Tibetan archives and books. Finally, in the past year or so, we've been happy to have C.V. Starr East Asian Library join us in celebrating our 75th anniversary, both at our gala dinner in Low Library, which happened right around the Lunar New Year last year, and as part of our 2024 calendar project. And most recently, unfortunately, Jim can't be here. I just texted him, but he was with us for a fundraising project trip to Bangkok, in which we work very closely with Daryl Yee. So there's so many potential exciting collaborations with the libraries that we've been working on for decades, and newer ones like what we just did with Thailand's Chulalongkorn University and the National University of Singapore Libraries. And that's what Jim was so instrumental. He was a phenomenal speaker at this event. Today's event builds on the history I was just talking about. That's because we're here to celebrate the Starr Library's acquisition of another major primary resource, the China Institute of America Records, which were gifted to Starr about a decade ago and are now being made available to researchers after a lot of painstaking work. For a good part of the 20th century, there probably wasn't a non-governmental organization that had more of a role in shaping U.S.-China relations than the China Institute. So the fact that these records are now going to be accessible to scholars is a genuine milestone, and indeed a cause for celebration. So in that spirit, I'll leave you with the suggestion for that today's event exemplifies not just the collaborative relationship between the Weatherhead Institute and the Starr Library, but also a kind of synergy that's possible when the faculty and students' teachings and research interests align with the library's primary resources to everyone's benefit. So thank you. I'm just going to do just a quick one to Evian Yian Pan, Julie Kwan, and all the Starr Library and Weatherhead staff who really made this event possible today. So without further ado, I will turn it over to George.
Thank you very much. George Go's representative, Dr. Yung Ho.
Well, it's a great pleasure and honor to speak on behalf of Mr. George Ge, and CEO of China Institute, who cannot be with us today due to a health issue. Hope that he will recover fairly soon. Yeah. Before I read his written remarks, let me just offer you a brief personal reflection. Like many of our visionary founders of China Institute, nearly a century ago, I am a proud product of Columbia University. I graduated in 1992. I was a student of Myron Cohen, who had served as the head of Weatherhead East Asian Institute for many years. So shortly after I graduated from Columbia, I began my journey with China Institute. First as a language teacher, then as the director of the language department. I went on to work for the UN in 2002. Yeah, but my connection with China Institute never faded. So over the years, I have remained actively involved with activities at the China Institute, primarily in leading the Renwen Society at the China Institute. That's Huamei Renwen Xuehui. We continue the heritage, we continue the tradition established by Kuo Ping-Wen and Meng Zhi. We offer lectures and symposiums and many other activities. So as China Institute approaches its 100th anniversary, I feel deeply honored to have witnessed a quarter century of its evolution with its commitment to education and cultural exchange. So I am eagerly look forward to learning more about the rich history of China Institute through the lens of archives today. So with that, I now invite you to join me as I share Mr. Ge's message. So I'm reading. So distinguished guests, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. My apologies that I could not be with you in person today due to an illness. My sincere congratulations to the East Asian Library at Columbia University for completing the monumental work of China Institute historical records. Almost a century ago, in 1926, the four visionary founders, Professor Paul Monroe and Professor John Dewey, and Dr. Kuo Ping-Wen and Dr. Hu Shi firmly believed in the value and the need for the US and China to understand each other better, and thus founded China Institute in America. Our founders approached the creation of China Institute with a mission to advance understanding through education and cultural exchange. Ideas that are as critical today, if not more so, than they were almost 100 years ago. For nearly 100 years, China Institute has been at the forefront of promoting exchanges between American and the Chinese people, turning purpose into action. For example, in 1926, China Institute organized China's educational exhibits at the 150th International Exposition in Philadelphia. In 1930, China Institute facilitated and sponsored Meilan Fang's picking opera tour in the US, which became a highlight of the season on Broadway. In 1944, China Institute was chartered by New York State as a continuing education school. So the charter is very much in effect today. Throughout 99 years of its history, China Institute in America was a home away from home for Chinese students and immigrants coming to the US. In the 1940s, China Institute helped acclimate Chinese students from Tsinghua University studying in the US and providing counseling to over 2,500 Chinese students here. During World War II, China Institute secured funding from both American and the Chinese governments to provide financial support for Chinese students in the US. Today, with close to 300,000 Chinese students studying in the US and 5.5 million Chinese Americans living in the country, China Institute as a hub and a home away from home becomes even more relevant. China Institute in America maintains the rules of our mission as we have expanded how we engage the general public. We continue to teach Chinese language for young children and for adults of all ages. We also offer diverse courses in Chinese literature, history, calligraphy, and movement. We have youth leadership tours to China with the US high school students during the summer. Since its establishment in 1966, the China Institute Gallery has hosted 124 exhibitions of the finest Chinese art spanning 5,000 years, from ancient artifacts to cutting-edge contemporary multimedia work. This year, our new China Institute Culinary Center present to celebrate and help elevate the art of Chinese cuisine and the culinary cultural experiences. Since 2004, China Institute has hosted 20 annual executive summits to bring together both American and Chinese business leaders and share insights on the most pressing economic and business topics that affect our world. Our day-long annual family-oriented events, Lunar New Year and the Mid-Autumn festivals, give children and their parents an opportunity to explore Chinese culture together. It is a different world now than the founders of our institute faced 100 years ago. We know that they will not recognize the complexity of the world we live in today, but we share a foundation and a commitment that is built upon generations inspired by visionary leaders like our founders, by trustees who have led the institute over many decades, and by dedicated staff, and those of you in this room today who share in the belief that enhancing US-China relations creates a better world for all of us. I look forward to building and imagining the future with all of you. Thank you.
Next, Evian, please.
Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay from the back as well? Good afternoon. Thank you, Zhenzhi, and thank you to our institutional leaders for their kind remarks. My name is Evian Pan, and I'm the Chinese processing archivist from the CV Starr East Asian Library here at Columbia University. And today I have the honor to introduce you to this wonderful collection that we get at our library, the China Institute in America Records. Here we go. So the collection first arrived at our library, as Lian had mentioned, a decade ago in 2015, when I believe China Institute was preparing its move from its previous location on the Upper East Side to now a newer and much expanded location in downtown Manhattan. Official processing work of this collection began in January of last year when I started to open each of the 43 bankers' boxes. During much of last year in 2014, I was able to rehouse the materials into preservation-grade folders, manuscript boxes, and at the same time to describe the materials and arrange them. In August of last year, we were able to finish about half of the collection, send them offsite to the library's offsite storage, and therefore making them available to researchers. And then as of January this year, we were able to do so for the entirety of the collection. So as Dr. Ho has already mentioned, just a bit of a historical note to preface our discussion here today. China Institute in America was founded in 1926 by renowned Chinese scholars Shih and Kuo Ping-Wen, together with American educators John Dewey and Paul Monroe, with significant support from the China Foundation for the Promotion of Education and Culture. From the outset, the Institute was envisioned as an educational and cultural bridge during a time when China was undergoing significant political and social transformation. At the time of its founding, the Institute had a fourfold mission. First, to disseminate information concerning Chinese and American education. Second, to promote a closer relationship between Chinese and American educational institutions through the exchange of professors and students. Third, to assist Chinese students in America in their educational pursuits and to help American students interested in the study of things Chinese. And then lastly, to stimulate general interest in America in the study of Chinese culture. This set of goals reflected a core belief that cultural exchange is essential to mutual understanding. Over the decades, China Institute has played a pivotal role in shaping American perspectives on China through its educational programs, business programs, and other arts and public engagements. And all of these institutional efforts from 99 years are richly documented in this archival collection that we got here at the library. From administrative records to reports to manuscripts to visual materials, photographs, all of that materials offer a deep and multi-perspective, multifaceted view into the legacy of this institute. And together we will, today we will explore just a small selection of moments from this century-long history, both from what I will introduce about this collection as well as from our panelists here today. So in a nutshell, the collection comes down to 104 archival containers, most manuscript boxes that look like that, and in addition to a few others that could accommodate the specific materials. In those 104 archival containers, we got over 1,200 folders. And this collection as a whole was described at the folder level. This means that every folder in this collection is a grouping of materials, and all of them share a line of description as well as a creation date or date range. And this collection is bulk dated between 1931 and 1996. We still have a few items that, yeah, is that okay? Okay. We still have a few items that date post 1990. Right? Still, it's not. Okay, got it. We still have a few items that date post 1996, but this just means that the primary focus of this collection is in its the first 7 to 8 decades, roughly. One of the key principles in archival processing is something we call honoring the original order. This means arranging a collection in a way that preserves the context in which the materials were originally created and used. So in line with this principle, this collection has a breakdown of 11 categories, 11 series. And essentially from series 2, China Foundation, to the very last series, photographs, materials were grouped together because they were found so originally in those bankers boxes. And then series 1 general program files is where I gathered the rest of the files that couldn't neatly fit into the other categories into a chronological order. And I feel compelled as an archivist to mention that if the reason an archivist is able to discern such, a rather clear structure out of a collection of institutional records spanning 7 or 8 decades, is because there were generations of staff at China Institute who put great effort into documenting their projects, their day-to-day activities with care and consistency. And looking at the series breakdown, we could already get a sense of how the Institute operated. There are different departments, for example, publications department, student and scholarship services department, and then as well as papers of important sort of leaders who have held, who were in position for a long period of time. So everything, all the information regarding this collection are gathered in what we call a finding aid. A finding aid is unique to each specific archival collection. It's a guide that could help you to get navigated within this collection of materials. So as of now, the full finding aid of China Institute in America Records is now published on the Archival Collections portal on the Columbia University Library's website. This finding aid, all the information is publicly accessible. If you are interested in coming to see and use the physical materials, you're welcome to make in-person appointments and come to the library to do so. So now I will very briefly introduce you a collection of highlighted materials. I have to say that it's very difficult to do so considering the width and breadth of this collection. So in 1932, there was a letter from Kuo Ping-Wen to Meng Zhi. Meng Zhi was the newly assumed president of the institute at that time. Kuo Ping-Wen writes in summary, against the backdrop of the Sino-Japanese trouble, I'm glad to see that the institute has been keeping up its various activities and is continuing to render its services to those who are in need. And here, Kuo Ping-Wen was referring to the many forms of support the Institute was offering to Chinese students in the US during a time when East Asia was marked by turbulent political conflict. The aid that the Institute was able to provide to students took many forms. There were scholarships and fellowships for various fields of studies, work-study programs, internship and job placements at various sites and companies across the US. And then within the collection, we find dozens, if not hundreds, of these inquiry letters, the two on the left here, from students across the US. And they wrote to ask about the application process, the criteria for scholarships, funding durations, and in response, the Institute staff, and at that time, oftentimes, President Meng Zhi himself responded with not only the inquired information, but also he would point the students to other additional resources that the Institute was connected with. Quickly moving on to 1950s, as Dr. Ho previously has mentioned, our collection contains extensive documentation on 3 major scholarships awarded to young Chinese scholars. The first one was the Tsinghua University Fellowship, which supported students and scholars from Tsinghua to pursue their study in the US. And then there was the C.T. Lu Chinese Education Fund. We have Mr. Lu pictured here in a photograph together with President Meng. And then the C.T. Lu Chinese Education Fund and the Frank Xu Scientific Fellowship. And the two of them were geared towards students mostly in science and engineering. In addition to these three, there were many other opportunities funded by private donors and foundations. Collectively, there were many. They play a critical role in supporting truly a generation of Chinese and Chinese American scholars. And in the collection, there are application files and continued correspondences with fellows even after their funding ended. And we see names of luminaries such as Chen Xingsheng, Zhou Peiyuan, Qian Xuesen, Xu Zhuoyun, and the list goes on. These examples not only reflect the China Institute's long commitment in education, but also underscores its pivotal role in supporting the academic journeys of generations. The second set of collection highlights I'd like to share centers on the Institute's former home, the 125 East 65th Street, also known as the China House. It's a 4-story brick house that became the home of the Institute in 1944 when it was gifted by the Henry Luce Foundation in memory of Henry Luce's father, Dr. Henry Winters Luce. Among the materials in the collection, there was a clipping, a New York Times clipping, marking the day the Institute formally accepted the gift of the China House. A public town hall celebration was held, led by Dr. H.H. Kong Xiangxi, who was the then vice premier of China. After the town hall, there were 3 months of renovation, which turned into the building to add many amenities into the building, libraries, galleries, lecture and teaching study rooms, and the China House officially opened in December of the same year, which I believe the photograph on the left here was taken, where you see leaders from the Luce Foundation as well as the Institute convene. Also in the collection, there was materials that could give you a sense of the space from different perspectives. Among the drawings, there was a blueprint, a plan of the 4th story of the townhouse, designed by architect Otis E. Kurth. And then there were dozens of diagrams that document the later addition into the buildings. And here we have one that shows something appears to be like an exhibition vitrine that might have later on was part of exhibitions that was held at the Institute. And then, in addition, on the lower left here, we have some rare finds, some leather samples all the way from the 50s. And they are just some rare materials that offer you a tactile dimension of, in addition to the visual, of the experience that you will get in that milestone space. One of the series in this collection consists of personal materials of President Paul Mengzhi. Mengzhi first arrived at the United States, in 1919 on a 5-year educational grant. He transferred here to Columbia in 1921 and went on to earn both his master's and doctoral degrees from here. As a young scholar in 1930, Dr. Meng was appointed president of the Institute, and he held the position for 37 years until his retirement in 1967. And in the collection, we have articles, papers, lecture scripts written by Dr. Meng, and I just made a few selections here, but as you can see, they impressively, cover a wide range of topics from education, literature, music, cultural exchange, and of course, U.S.-China relations. After his retirement, Dr. Meng notably wrote a short memoir titled an experiment in Chinese-American partnerships, 37 years of China Institute. And it became a chapter of his book, this one here, Chinese-American Understanding. And in a memoir, Dr. Meng reflects on how he first came on board, how he came to lead the Institute. It's, many decades of projects and milestones, as well as he offered acknowledgments to supporters from both sides of the Pacific. And I just want to mention this piece of memoir because it truly stands as an important piece that documents the history of the Institute. Another key figure represented in this collection is Wangge Wen Wange. He was a renowned art historian, collector, and filmmaker. In 1971, Wen was elected co-chairman of the China Institute's Art Committee. And then in a decade or so, he became the president of the Institute from 1982 to 1986. And from materials in the collection, we see how Wen's leadership reflected a deep commitment to cultural preservation and exchange, and particularly projects in the arts. And here we see, we have this photograph from the collection of President Wangge Wen cutting the cake at the Institute's 60th anniversary back in 1986. I will skip this slide because we are short on time. Also, from materials in this collection, we see how Wangge Wen was instrumental in sustaining China Institute as a nonprofit organization, how development really became a core of a core task to Dr. Wen's presidency. During his leadership, the Institute organized a series of development-focused events in order to strengthen the foundation and future of the nonprofit organization. And we have a lot of photographs from the 80s of these glamorous benefit dinners. And pictured here are two. On the two smaller photographs on the right are from 84 versus the one on the left is from 86, again, the 60th anniversary of the Institute. And it was really moving to see how these gatherings brought together prominent Chinese and Asian American professionals from different industries, and how they were uniting in their support for the Institute's mission and future. Last but not least, the collection sheds light on a vital aspect of the Institute's activity, which is its deep commitment in arts and culture. There were seasonal exhibitions of Chinese art, different lectures delving into diverse dimensions of Chinese culture, talks by artists, writers, creators, filmmakers, and more. And these programs not only enriched the communities in the past, but they continue to be a vibrant aspect of the Institute's work today. So to end my presentation, please allow me to quote Dr. Meng Zhi from his memoir. In China, the most treasured friendship is 世交, generations of mutuality. 世交, I think, has been achieved by the many representatives and associates of China Institute, whether staff or volunteer across America. May your efforts be fruitful. May your light continue to shine. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you. If you have any questions regarding this collection, curious about any aspects of the materials that we hold, feel free to contact me. If you have any questions right at the moment, we would prefer you to save that till the very end for the Q&A, as we are a little short on time. So now we will quickly move on to the next part of today's program, which is a screening of a 15-minute documentary film produced by former President Wen Wange back in 1977. It was part of the celebration for the Institute's 50th anniversary, kind of a midpoint to where we are now. The film is titled Where East and West Meet. It was produced in 1977. And we also borrowed this phrase, where East and West meet, for today's event, as it truly captures the spirit and mission of China Institute's work across the decades. I should mention that this film is part of the Wange Wen Film Collection, which was generously donated to the Starr Library by Wange Wen's family a few years ago. And following the screening, we will take a short break before continue on and hear from our panelists here today.
We strive to the one increasing purpose of seeking understanding and friendship among the peoples of the East, of discovering the sources of their greatness, of trying to interpret the West to the East and the East to the West.
On behalf of China Planning Council and China Institute, which I represent, I welcome you all to this Chinatown Cultural Festival. Today is being Youth Day, so the program will be especially good.
It's an art gallery, a university, a counseling center, a home, and a refuge. A showcase for the grandeur and glory of a nation of 800 million. It is the place where Americans can find an ancient civilization and probe the latest developments of a thriving, complex, modern nation. It is the gateway for thousands of students and immigrants to America. It is the citadel that reminds American-born Chinese of their cultural heritage, a beacon of the richness of their double birthright. China Institute in America is the focal point where the fascinating double exposure of Chinese and American cultures takes place. Today, as since its inception in 1926, the Institute has but one simple aim: making East see West and West see East. The heart of the Institute is a school of general studies, incorporated under the University of the State of New York and accredited by the Board of Education. The school offers courses that present the breadth of classical Chinese civilization and culture, and the excitement and complexity of contemporary Chinese affairs, philosophy, religion, history, art, language, music, folklore, and dancing. All are a part of the Institute's continuing program.
We hold one stick on the juncture of your thumb and your index finger, about 3 inches from the flat end here.
When in the spring of 1966, the People's Republic of China stopped the publication of all archaeological journals.
The faculty for this unique school are among the best in their fields. World-renowned, hand-picked for particular courses, they are actually engaged in the training of other teachers. Today, 75% of the Institute's over 1,500 students each year are teachers themselves in the elementary and high schools from the greater New York area. In cooperation with the Board of Education of the City of New York, these teacher students are given 2 in-service credits for each course they complete. Not all of the Institute's courses are aimed at Westerners. A course in computer programming has been established for Chinese immigrants, taught in both English and Chinese by volunteers from the Chinese Institute of Engineers. Such professional training will aid many in the difficult task of adapting to a new culture. Nor are courses the only offering of the School of General Studies. A symposium on Communist China and world trade was held even before President Nixon's trip to China. It was attended by business people from 48 corporations. Also recently, a live demonstration of acupuncture, the ancient Chinese healing art that of late has captured the interest of the West.
In the first finger.
But perhaps the most far-reaching of the school's many activities are the specially prepared films on Chinese art and culture that are shown to visiting groups, including many school children. A generous grant has made possible this series of educational films on China's history, emphasizing Chinese culture, not only its vitality, but also the reciprocal influence between it and the West. Here's a portion of a film on Buddhism, which has been widely acclaimed for its excellence. The goal of this series is to put Chinese history easily within the realm of as many people as possible, including in our schools and on public television. For followers of the Chinese arts, the China House Gallery hosts exhibitions of classical Chinese art. This recent show, Dragons in Chinese Art, indicates their exquisite quality. Such exhibitions render insight into the minds, hearts, and techniques of faraway artists. This hand scroll by Wan Chung Ming stirs pride in every Chinese for his cultural heritage. Such shows are possible only through the generous contributions of the sponsors of China House Gallery, which celebrated the start of its 7th year with an exhibition of Chinese paintings entitled Wintry Forest, Old Trees, Landscape Themes in Chinese Painting. In reviewing the show for the New York Times, John Kennedy called it a deeply happy show. These activities certainly bring East to West, but what of bringing West to the East? Here the Institute is equally diligent. It acts as the rallying point for one widely dispersed group of Chinese in America, over 9,000 Chinese students. For them, the China Institute, working with the Chinese student organizations, provides a social center and, in some cases, a refuge. This includes Friday night open houses and a Labor Day convention held annually in upstate New York. To help students with specific problems that may arise during the year, the Institute has on permanent staff a professional counselor. He is dedicated to answering questions on any subject, from how the student can secure scholarship monies to where they can find a good dentist. And when the summer rolls around, the counselor acts as a one-man placement service, finding jobs for students from all over the country.
Fine. Mr. Yang will report to you on June 10. Goodbye.
So the China Institute serves today, and so it has served since its very beginning, back in 1926, when Dr. Paul Monroe, an American educator and U.S. ambassador to China, and Dr. P.W. Kuo, a Chinese educator, founded in New York City a subsidiary office of the China Foundation for the Promotion of Education and Culture, then located in Peking. Only 2 rooms and a borrowed classroom, the Institute's one teacher provided a helping hand to the Chinese students who at that time were in this country. The chaos of the Civil War in China in 1929 forced the co-founders to change the Institute into a self-supporting American corporation, and it has remained so until today. In 1944, the Institute moved into its present headquarters at the China House, a gift of the Henry Luce Foundation in memory of Dr. Henry Winters Luce, friend of China, proud ambassador of America's goodwill, spirit of the China Institute's purpose. Through these years, the Institute has been a home, a school, a center of Chinese culture, but it has also tried to be more. Having fit its services to the needs of the time, the Institute is now responding to a strong resurgence of ethnic pride in American Chinese. To meet this need, the Institute offers a course on the history of the Chinese in America.
Unless there's a problem, there's no investigation. Unless there's investigation, there's no awareness. Unless there's awareness, there's no solution.
Also, the gallery has focused on current Chinese art, including sponsoring performances by contemporary Chinese artists and performers. From an exhibition of a single artist's work or the performance of a Peking opera, the China Institute offers a showcase for modern Chinese talent. From honoring the winners of a Chinatown talent contest to fashion shows, something worthwhile is always happening at the China Institute.
And it's modeled by Miss Amy Ai.
Perhaps the event which is the greatest spur to Chinese ethnic pride is the annual Chinatown Cultural Festival. Singing, dancing, guest appearances by Chinese movie stars and political leaders, demonstrations of Kung Fu, the ancient Chinese art of self-defense. All this and more fill the 10 summer weekends set aside for the festival in Chinatown's Columbus Park by its sponsors, the China Institute and the Chinatown Planning Council. These 10 weekends draw the Chinese American population to their roots and have forged a strong bond between the China Institute and New York's Chinese population. To meet these challenging needs, the Institute requires astute leadership. Richard Shih, the president of the China Institute, is such a leader. Having spent almost half his life in China and half in the United States, he is ideally suited to the task of promoting understanding between the two peoples. He sees the objective clearly.
By providing one people with meaningful information about the other, we hope to further better understanding between the two.
Dr. Shih is equally concerned with helping ethnic Chinese develop pride in their ancient heritage as well as a modern Chinese-American identity.
It's essential for a Chinese American to understand who he is in today's world. And it is important for him to understand the historical and cultural background that makes him behave the way he does.
Equally concerned with the Institute's well-being and equally devoted to its success is the Institute's group of trustees. Onto this small group and their associates fall the perennial problem of fundraising. Having no endowment and very little government support, and being a non-profit organization, the Institute must rely for its funds on grants from foundations, contributions from business corporations, and individuals. For this small group to gather the $500,000 per year it takes to run the Institute is a titanic but rewarding task. And the trustees cannot do this alone. Recently, the Women's Association of the China Institute, a group dedicated to the unique problems of the Chinese woman in America, held their annual bazaar, which again contributed thousands of dollars to the Institute's program. If the China Institute's future is to be as illustrious as its past, it will need more than the continued help of its present supporters. it will need to enlist the aid of a whole host of new ones as well. It will need you, because to go forward means to expand. To expand the school in order to accommodate the excess of applicants who sometimes must wait as long as 2 years for a specific course. To establish a research and action center which would gather and store demographic data about the Chinese in America. To complete in full the series of films on Chinese history. To go forward requires a united effort by all those who know what a strong China Institute can accomplish. And forward the Institute must go to meet the challenges the future will offer as it has met the challenges of the past. With your support, the China Institute will continue to help Chinese and Americans adjust constructively and creatively to the changes that will inevitably occur in their worlds. For Americans, the China Institute will continue to be a window to the East. For Chinese, a window to the West. For Chinese Americans, a double exposure unto themselves.
And from the presentation by my colleague Evian Pan, and also from watching the brief but very interesting film, I noticed a few panelists took notes and wrote something. I just want to start by perhaps asking Michael that did you write down some reflections or
You mean from the film?
from the film?
Well, particularly intrigued by was the photo with. I was particularly intrigued by that photo with Lu Qingcai, C.T. Lu, and Ji Meng. My father always was very grateful to China Institute. He received a scholarship in 1940 when he attended Berkeley. So China Institute, we forget that their big part of their program was to support Chinese students who didn't have the financial resources to attend school. So when I saw the C.T. Lu with Ji Meng, it brought back memories how the China Institute helped so many students gain entrance to U.S. colleges. Thank you.
Thank you. Following that, and your father, I believe that tried to give it back to China Institute by serving for the Institute. And I was told, and also from what I read, that it's a very difficult economic time. And do you know some information that he helped to steer the Institute out of the economic difficulties?
Well, the calls would come on the weekends because my father worked full time, and we would see on the phone services, it's Lyme, New Hampshire, and I knew when I saw it was Wango Wong, and he would call my dad usually on a Sunday afternoon and said, Ivan, we don't have enough money to pay the payroll this month. So my father was actually the first one that started the endowment fund at China Institute so that we wouldn't have this problem. But as I mentioned in my brief remarks, Wango was terrific. He came out of retirement in the 80s, came back to New York, and his salary at China Institute for several years was $1 per year. And a long car ride back to Lyme. I think it took 6 hours to get back. But as I mentioned in my paper, if there was ever a Hall of Fame at China Institute, Wango would be at the top of my list. He was completely dedicated. Those that knew him, he lived, he thought day by day about China Institute and how to make it better. The other thing is, my dad also was able to rally support from some of his friends on Wall Street to help China Institute. It was in dire financial, if you remember in the 80s, especially 1987, it was a very difficult time for New York City. Wall Street had a big crash where the market was down 20% in one day. I mean, it's equivalent today of the market going down, what, 10, 15,000 points in a day. And so people during those times, as now actually, it's very difficult for people to be generous when they see their portfolios way down. But Wongo, my dad, Oscar Tang, Ernie Liu, who was already a partner at Goldman Sachs, they came to the rescue and saved China Institute from very, very difficult circumstances.
That's amazing. I think also, to my knowledge, that some members of your family, other members, worked for the institute too.
Yep.
As far as I know that, for instance, your wife Winnie.
That's right.
worked
That's right.
directly for the institute.
Yeah. In fact, Winnie told me before today's event that she actually went through the archives when they were at China Institute over 10 years ago. And the first thing she said is, "Wow, what a mess." But like all archives, I mean, I went through my grandfather's papers. There were 40. He served the Chinese government, and we ended up giving over 50,000 documents to Hoover at Stanford University. And condition of archives depends on how you hold them. Well, they were in our basement for 40 years. And so you get water leakage. There was another problem at China Institute. I always say the wooden floors creak and the pipes leak. It was molding. So not only bad for the documents, but dangerous to health. The archives found a good place here. And as we see by that superb presentation given earlier, it's in the right place, and the papers will be well taken care of. Wongo would be very happy with where the papers went.
Thank you. I still vividly remember that Jim and I went to the basement of China Institute with the help of members of China Institute to get from the both murky, humid, and very hot place.
Yeah.
I think you talked about the archives, not only China Institute records that you mentioned your wife went through, and also you went through and, of course, organized and donated some papers to four institutions in Stanford. That reminded me that you both of you are talking from almost professional perspective. Actually, your wife, Winnie Fong, who is here, is a trained archivist from Columbia University, right here.
Right here, and she's over there.
Yeah.
That's right. And she wasn't 23 years old when she received her master's here. She went back to school and received her master's in information management and became the archivist at her school and also the head librarian. So, and has been a great help over the years to my working on my family archives.
That's great. I take the privilege to ask Caroline a question or two. Then we move to our two professors. That you mentioned before that you still remember Kuo Ping-Wen's time, and especially after his career at the China Institute and his educational and diplomatic career. He almost in his retirement set up an association of Chinese culture related. I just wonder if you have any memory about his activities for the cultural continuation from China Institute?
Well, I was born 1960. So he set the Sino-American Foundation up in 1953 when he retired from Chinese civil service in 49. He was deputy director of the United Nations Rehabilitation and Relief Administration. And then he also, then they moved to Washington, D.C., and then that's where he decided to set up the Sino-American Foundation. But my own experience is that I was born in 1960. So from 1960 to 1964, we lived in Richmond, Virginia. And every month my parents would put me in the car and we would drive to Washington, D.C. And what I really remembered about him was that he had a desk full of mechanical toys that I really wanted to play with. And I didn't quite dare because he would just show you. He would say, see my whatever toy winded up, and you understood you couldn't touch it. And then he passed away in 1969. By then we were already living in Thailand.
That I think reminded me of Kuo Ping-Wen's dissertation. He won the first PhD dissertation in education from Teachers College as a Chinese student. I think the almost Excel-like tables and charts and diagrams from that time is apparently a very, how should I say? I mean, it's absolutely kind of ahead of his time and following his very strong, very clean, very careful, meticulous habit.
Well, his dissertation, which was 1914, was Chinese public education. And that was actually written in English. And it wasn't only till he went back to Shanghai that it was published in Chinese by the commercial press. But it was published here in America actively until the 70s. And in the last 20 years, it has been republished again. So it's a book that it's a dissertation, a publication that has really withstood, time.
And I think a recent decade or more, you have done lots of things that advocating the legacies of Kuo Ping-Wen, especially by doing something at Columbia. Would you please let us know that primary things that you did relating to Professor Kuo Ping-Wen, especially, for instance, I think some scholarship and also the, student events that you helped with?
Over time, with the 1949 and the change of government in China, a lot of nationalist figures were put under the radar. And so even Kuo Ping-Wen, after he returned to China in 1914, after getting his PhD, he founded two universities, and they were pioneering institutions. First one was Southeast Nanjing University. It's the first co-ed university in China, and the first one with an all Chinese faculty. There were other modern universities founded since the late 1880s in China, but they were missionary founded, and the top dog was always a Caucasian. So this was all Chinese faculty. And in fact, that's what he spent all his time doing when he was an undergraduate at Worcester University and then at Columbia, was networking. He networked with every student getting their PhD in America. And so then when he went home, he got back to China, he was able to hire them. And then he felt, well, with the oncoming of what we call modern education in China, was no longer just classical Chinese, but it included math and science. And so he felt there really needed to be a institution that focused on economics and finance. So then he founded the Shanghai Finance and Economic University. So those were his two achievements. And then here, once China Institute, as you know, went through many had a long history and many different leaders after Dr. Meng. By the time I got involved 20 some years ago, they'd actually didn't know who Kuo Ping-Wen was. They had totally forgotten. And even here at Columbia, you know, they knew John Dewey. So in 2014, and it was really due to He Yong, who approached me at China Institute and said, you know, no one remembers Kuo Ping-Wen anymore. They don't even know he was the founder, and they don't even remember him at Columbia. So it was coming up for the 100th anniversary. And he said, you know, you should really organize a symposium. And I never told you at that time, I was so furious inside. I thought another thing for me to have to do. And it kind of ate at me. And anyway, we organized in 2014 a very successful international symposium here at Columbia, and 25 professors from China and Taiwan who study Kuo Ping-Wen came. And after that, I would say it really put him back on the map. So that's.
I think also you helped to set up a scholarship at Teachers College, as well as in a few universities in China, and even sponsored the academic conferences. I think this is indeed a very good way to continue Kuo Ping-Wen's legacy. May I move to next panelist, that Professor Ye, you studied the Chinese students in this country, especially beginning of the 20th century, and many of them are somehow either sponsored by China Institute, or some definitely have had close relations with China Institute as well as with Columbia. I just wonder, from your studies, how could you, what are your major discoveries, as well as how did you use the archive materials? I don't know if that time you used the China Institute records.
No, actually, it's truly an honor to be here. And I'm here because of Meng Zhi, or Paul Meng. Okay, and I'm glad that his name was mentioned a number of times, but I don't see him, his image in the film. He should be definitely put in the map. He's little known in China. Basically, nobody knows about him. I came to the United States at the beginning of China's reform era, and I became interested in people who came earlier than my generation, the generation of the 80s. So I did studies on that generation. The first, it's basically, this is the title of my book, Seeking Modernity in China's Name. It's actually about Chinese students from 1900 to 1927. Meng Zhi, or Paul Meng, was rarely mentioned in this book because I don't really find, there isn't much material about him. And only today did I learn that the China Institute was heavily involved in offering scholarships for Chinese students. Okay, but I would just like to use this very precious opportunity to say a few words about Paul Meng, or Meng Zhi. I met him in 1985 when I was working on my dissertation in White Plains. Okay, he was born in 1900, so he was 85 years old. He was called president of China Institute, but when he took over, he was only 30 years old. He called himself a young nobody. So he was not one of the founders. The four founders, their names were mentioned repeatedly, but of course he was not there. But I would call him the builder of China Institute. He actually worked from 1930 to 1967, almost 40 years. He devoted himself to China Institute, okay? His image should really sort of appear in this film. He was the builder, and when he took over this young nobody, China Institute was a very small entity, a very just a few people, not in. Later, it was moved to the Manhattan. I don't really know where it was. Okay. Okay, no, it's actually in 1930. I have no idea where the institute was. 57. Okay, okay, thank you. And there was actually a little over $100 in the account of the institute. So I wouldn't really call him a president. I think he was probably just a director, and with a very small number of staff members. So he was the builder, and under his leadership of almost 40 years, China Institute not only survived, it thrived. It thrived. Okay, and if you think about the years, all the turbulent years in Chinese history, in American history, on world stage for almost 40 years, okay, so under his leadership, China Institute survived. And what I found, he wrote a book, it's called Chinese American Understanding, 60-year search, okay. I would say that he worked under two principles, if I may say, two principles. Number one was 不党, non-partisan. And this 不党 actually referred to this, at the time, it was actually about this divide in Chinese politics, nationalist versus communist. Okay, 不党. And another principle was 民间立场. Okay, so it was non-governmental position. It was an NGO, right? I didn't really study. I just, there were so many interesting, important figures from both countries. But if you think about the Chinese, on the Chinese side, so many interesting people had some kind of relationship with China Institute. So I just feel, I just have very deep admiration, but I didn't really have much material at the time. Actually, I went to China Institute and I asked about where can I find materials, and they didn't know. Okay. So I just used very limited sort of whatever I could find to come up with really a very simple portrait of this incredible human being. There are two things I want to mention about Meng Zhi, which I don't really see mentioned. One was in 1932, after Manchuria was occupied by the Japanese, there was this publishing house, I think it was Macmillan. They wanted to publish a book. They invited probably a Japanese person to write. Japan speaks on the conflict between China and Japan. Okay, and after that Japanese version, that Japanese Japan speaks was completed, he was looking for somebody to write on China speaks. So he found Paul Meng Zhi. He was still young nobody, 1932, okay. And Meng Zhi was only given 1 month. He finished this book of 200 pages. So he became, in a way, the spokesperson, but unofficial spokesperson for China, because the Japanese was trying to really, it was a much powerful, rich country to justify their occupation of Manchuria. So this China Speaks, written by, it was not mentioned in this list of the articles. Another thing that I thought was amazing, and that also I would say that reflect his Budang, nonpartisan, was in 1945, after at the end of, I mean, the Second World War was ended with this victory of the Allied powers, and there was a celebration in New York City. Meng Zhi was able to draw people from people with backgrounds in communist, nationalist, and also this Qiniandang Youth Party. Okay, so that was another thing that was quite, Meng Zhi was somebody that really, and also through him, through his connections, through people, so many interesting top intellectuals that had relationship with China Institute. You could really do a very interesting study on Republican period. That is the period. Another period which I didn't find any materials, I didn't do anything, was the Cold War period. Okay, late 40s and early 50s. And I assume there must be some very interesting materials there. Okay. Anyway, I want to end sort of my comments I'm an admirer, you can tell, that I'm so glad that I have the opportunity to talk about this young nobody in his when he first took over. His book's title is Chinese American Understanding, a 60 Years Search. And I would say the search continues. Chinese American Understanding, the search continues. And there's still a long, long way to go. But we should not forget people like Kuo Ping-Wen and also Meng Zhi. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to say one thing about Dr. Meng is that Kuo Ping-Wen handpicked him when he had to go back to take a government position in China, and also the Budang. Kuo Ping-Wen, even though he was a very loyal, contributing civil servant, he was also nonpartisan. He was not a party member. Their whole mission in life was for the country, for the better of the country. And so I think he also chose Dr. Meng for that reason.
That is very true. And also, to my understanding, Meng Zhi also expanded China Institute into an international network with offices in Taiwan, early time Southeast Asia, even in Europe. I think one reason that not many people knew about Meng Zhi, I mean, right now, fortunately, not only the book manuscript is in the processed China Institute records, but also there is a series on Meng Zhi papers. Yes. In addition to that, I think there's one Meng Zhi papers, unfortunately, until today, is still not housed by a library, but by an Asian Studies Institute, rightfully, but not necessarily in terms of library processing access, not necessarily very easy. That is in Wesleyan University, Asian Studies.
Yeah, I went there. I wonder if there are any surviving family members.
Meng Zhi's daughter is still
in the U.S.
But I wish to mention one thing that should be denied, that even 2 weeks ago, we have 2 researchers who specifically focused on Meng Zhi studies and using the processed China Institute records. So I think more and more people are going to study and know Meng Zhi.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, thank you. Next, Professor Yanqiu Zhen, I think you probably are the only scholar personally interviewed Wan Guowong, very important figure of China Institute, and also the the director of the film we saw, as well as you used, I think, extensively all the materials available for your book, for your study. So would you please share your discoveries and your, for instance, experience, your reactions working with Van Gogh and on China Institute materials?
Of course. Thank you, Wang Laoshi. And first of all, I just really want to say thank you to our wonderful and generous host. And I am actually a card-carrying Columbia community member, and I have been to this room many times in the audience attending various events, but today is the first time I'm actually sitting here and talking to people. So it's really an honor. And also my book, which is titled In Search of Admiration and Respect, Chinese Cultural Diplomacy in the United States, 1875 to 1974, came out last year through University of Michigan Press. It's also part of the Weatherhead, Columbia Weatherhead East Asian Studies, East Asian Institute Studies book series. So it's really a double honor, right, to be here. And in response to Wang Laoshi's question, I don't think I can claim to be the only scholar who has interviewed Van Gogh, and actually, thanks to of course Carolyn, she actually introduced me to Van Gogh, and also Richard Xu, who also appeared in that film shot by Van Gogh in the late 1970s, and that kind of interview, oral history, if you will, really adds a different dimension to my book, which really spends a lot of time looking at the history of the China Institute, and of course its complicated relationship with the nationalist government, both on the Chinese mainland and also in Taiwan after 1949. And I would say, when it comes to that kind of relationship, there is often that kind of assumption. And also this is in response to Ye Laoshi's comment about the Cold War period, right? Because her pioneering work was focusing on the early 20th century. And my book looks at centuries, a period between the late 19th to the late 20th century, but my focus is between the middle part of the 20th century. So I do look at the Cold War period very extensively. And often when it comes to the relationship between the China Institute and the nationalist government, there is that kind of assumption that the China Institute was basically the unofficial, right, spokesperson for the government in the United States back then. And well, if I may, can I actually show everyone just one picture from my presentation? Thank you.
It's coming up.
Okay, thank you. Because I think that really gives us a very revealing understanding of the actually very complicated relationship between the China Institute in America and the nationalist government, as I was just talking about it. And okay. Well, this is my book, and I also have a copy with me, so in case you're interested. And I first came across the China Institute when I was doing research, actually, at Indiana University Bloomington Libraries, looking at the university archives there. And even though I was born and raised in China, I've never heard of the China Institute when I was in China. And such an irony to first learn about it in the United States. And I was looking at the Institute's assistance for Chinese students studying in the United States in the 1930s, 1940s. And later, I was able to expand my research on the history of the China Institute, again, thanks to Carolyn's introduction to many witnesses of the Institute's important history. And I think here you can see the New York Times report of the dedication of the China House, actually dating back to 1944. And I think Avian just referenced this particular piece in her presentation. And here I want to draw your attention to, well, this phrase, the way is one and the winds blow together. That's actually the title for my presentation here. And so those of you who know Chinese, maybe you can guess what the Chinese phrase is for characters. And this is the calligraphy, right, given to the China Institute, actually written by Chiang Kai-shek himself, by Kong Xiangxi, Dr. Kong, who was at that ceremony. And well, also China Institute, the English name, of course, China Institute in America, and then here, Huamei Xiejing She being the Chinese name. And just keep in mind, Huamei Xiejing She, 5 characters, right? So the calligraphy, right? Way is one, winds blow together. And I went to the old China House maybe 2 times, first in 2012. And when I was doing research there, and I was basically given 3 hours in a, in a dingy room looking at the unprocessed records, right? And later in 2014, I was able to go back there as part of the Kuo Ping-Wen Symposium sponsored by Carolyn. And in neither visit was I able to see actually the calligraphy by Chiang Kai-shek himself. And guess where I found it? I actually found it in this book on, let's see, Dr. Zhang Boling's visit to the United States in the late 1940s. And this actually was Dr. Zhang at the China Institute. And look at this. That's the calligraphy. And the funny thing is, as I said here, devil in the details, right? Chiang Kai-shek's dedication, 道一风同, which is the Chinese, right? The way is one and the winds blow together. Yet, if you look at Chiang Kai-shek's dedication very, very carefully, and by the way, of course, Jiang Zhongzhen, that's his signature, right? And if you look at his dedication here, what do you see? 中国协会会所开幕纪念. What's the Chinese name of this organization we're talking about? 华美协进社. Guess what? Chiang Kai-shek or his associates did not even bother to double check the Chinese name of China Institute in America. Hence, all the rumored discussion about the very, very close relationship between China Institute and the nationalist government. I think we really need to look at that with a lot of grain of salt. So here is, of course, just one example. And in case you're interested, I have more, of course, relevant discussions in my book. Thank you so much.
This is a very interesting discovery. Thank you. I think right now, may we open to our audience if you have any questions, comments.
I think when we talk about the great history of China Institute, I think one thing which we should remember that there was a period of time when there were these great, unbelievable art exhibits put on by China Institute, curated by great scholars, like the one that you showed on the Wen Zhengming painting, Wintry Forest. I remember a friend of mine who was interested in collecting Chinese art. She's an American. And, she always raved about that exhibit. And there was another one, the Yixingware. I've never seen such an elegant exhibit like that. And I remember, I still have the catalog, which I look at. I mean, these were the great days of China Institute. After all, we all live in America. I think it's very important for us as Chinese to introduce the best of our culture, history, and art to Americans, instead of having always, the Chinese are doing this. But when you look at the Japanese, they really know how to introduce the best of their history and art to Americans, whereas we Chinese, we have some of the best art, but we don't show them. I mean, I remember Dennis and I would always look forward to when is the next art opening at China Institute. They were so beautifully done. There was a period of time. And I think we should remember that.
Thank you. I think people from China Institute can respond to this request and questions very well. And also, I think to my knowledge, that there's a gallery and there's an exhibition going on, right, currently?
Well, I think, I'm not saying that Japanese art may be a little more user-friendly. It's easier to understand. So for the Westerner, it's easier. Chinese painting is really beautiful, but it's also scholarship. So it's more complicated. As you can see by the comment of the New York Times art critic, what did he call it? A happy exhibition, because he probably couldn't, it was, heads or tails. He couldn't make heads or tails of it. So like when Mike Hearn from the Met did an exhibit called The Body of a Painting, and he explained like a basic ABC how to read a Chinese painting. I thought that was something very helpful to introduce Westerners, how to look at a Chinese painting. And I think that's really one of the reasons why, sometimes it's just not as appreciated, because it's complicated.
I want to mention that the exhibitions at China House were very, very important for one very specific reason. It gave the opportunity for young Chinese scholars of Chinese art, many of them who were PhD candidates, exposure for the first time to an American audience. And they went on to become leaders in American universities. It became very well published, and some of them actually I use today to consult with in building my collection. But there was no other opportunity. We always forget how difficult it was in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, and 70s for Chinese professionals to be accepted in American society. We take it more for granted today, but we're still not there yet. But China Institute paid for young, talented scholars from China to come to New York City to spend 1 week here, and very, very important, they had their first exposure to an American audience.
Additionally, I think Columbia University here has a very robust Chinese art history program, and also the libraries. We have diligently collecting materials related to Chinese art history, and also equally important, Kathy, probably you are not aware that Columbia University libraries art properties apparently under our new leadership, especially our associate university librarian, Chris Coroni, recent so many years, all the hidden art objects and many good things have been very well processed, organized. So in case you need to use, for instance, Chinese bronze objects that write to us that it is accessible and usable.
Yeah. Well, I know you have a wonderful collection, Mr. Swirgo, right? Went through your collection from a big exhibit a few years ago of what you have on the Columbia campus. Remember that?
Yeah.
You've got a great collection,
Yeah.
but they are not together. But Mr. Swirgo put up that great exhibit to show what you could have. Remember that exhibit?
Yeah. But right now it's more better organized, more accessible, so that you and your friends may.
Can I add a note? As a current China Institute faculty, we do have the gallery open right now, and we have a active exhibition now from March 6th to July 13th. It's called Eternal Offerings, which is a collaboration program of Minneapolis Museum of the amazing bronze show. We're showcasing about 70 of the most important bronze art pieces right now you can find in America. So everybody is welcome to visit. I'll personally to host you and show you all. Okay.
That's great. Thank you very much.
王老师, if I may just add one thing, of course, in the documentary, in the film shot by Wango in the late 70s, it mentions that the art exhibition started in the 60s, but actually, according to my research, right after the acquisition of China House in 1944, they already started that kind of exhibition without, big gallery space. Yet that is really one of the first institutions in the United States to have that kind of dedicated series exhibitions on Chinese artifacts dating back to the 1940s, actually.
It is the only one.
I'd just like to say that as a continuation of what you were talking about, the bronze exhibition, this Saturday afternoon will be the Orchid Pavilion event, where the curator from the Minneapolis Art Institute will be giving a walkthrough of the exhibition, as well as a lecture. So
we invite everyone to come.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to come. I've been associated with the Institute for over 30 years, first as a trustee, and now I sit on the gallery committee. So
if I may,
China Institute in Wall Street. Yeah.
If I may, I noticed that Lu Qingzhai was involved when Wang Ge was the president. Lu Qingzhai was based in France, right?
Yeah,
Paris. But he set up this scholarship and something and so I this is something very interesting to me, because Lu Qingzhai was an extremely interesting person. So I would like to know more. Maybe not now, but because he was one of the biggest art collections, promoted Chinese art and antiques in the West. Period.
Yeah,
that was Lu Qingzhai.
Yeah, there were more materials
Chinese
available.
paintings at China Institute. I've seen the catalogs.
Any more questions, comments? Okay, sure.
I just want to, because we talked about art, and also as a current staff member of China Institute, in charge of education programs, I just want to see so many activities and programs mentioned in the archive presentation, and the mission at the very beginning, focusing on the Chinese students coming here to the United States, advancing understanding of China and Chinese culture for Americans and for people here, and also the people-to-people exchange. We are currently still hosting faculty members from East China Normal University and students. So this continuation is continuing. As well, we are nearing our centennial, but the work that has been built up for many generations of people as dedicated as Kuo Ping-Wen, Paul Monroe, as Meng Zhi, as many people, as everybody sitting here and upcoming, it's the work of people coming together. So I'm so moved for this event, and thanks to Columbia, to the library to actually put the work, making this accessible. This is really great. Thank you.
And thank you all. With that very good statement, we need to conclude our event today. Again, let's thank our panelists.